Hi Pisces, welcome back. I'm really grateful you're here today. Take a slow breath with me for just a moment, let your shoulders relax, quiet the outside world, and simply allow yourself to be present. If this message finds you at the right time, trust what resonates and leave behind anything that doesn't. Okay, let's see what the cards have been quietly waiting to reveal. The first card resting on the table is the Lovers, and the moment it appears, I can't help but feel there's someone whose heart has become far more invested in you than they ever intended. This doesn't feel like a passing attraction or a fleeting curiosity. It feels like someone who believed they had everything under control until your energy slowly found its way into places inside them they had kept locked for a very long time. They may have tried to convince themselves that these feelings would fade. They may have buried themselves in work, distractions, responsibilities, or simply silence. But somehow, every road seems to circle back to you. That's the interesting part about this connection. The harder they try to stay emotionally composed, the louder their heart seems to become. They aren't just remembering conversations or moments you shared, they're remembering the way they felt around you. That's much harder to escape. Then I noticed the Ace of Cups entering the reading, almost like a quiet stream finally breaking through a wall that has stood for years. Something inside this person has begun to soften. Maybe they don't fully understand why. Maybe they aren't even ready to admit it out loud. But their emotions have become impossible to ignore. There are moments when they catch themselves smiling because of a memory of you, only to realize seconds later that they weren't supposed to be thinking about you at all. Yeah, it almost surprises them every single time. For many of you Pisces, you've always carried a very gentle energy without even trying. You don't force people to open their hearts. Somehow, they simply begin doing it around you. This person may never have expected that someone could see beyond their defenses so naturally. You weren't trying to fix them. You weren't trying to change them. You simply accepted parts of them they spent years hiding from everyone else. That kind of acceptance can be both beautiful and terrifying. The Four of Swords is quietly sitting beside these cards, and it tells me there has been distance. Maybe physical distance, maybe emotional silence. Maybe both. On the surface, everything may appear calm. It could even seem like nothing is happening at all. But beneath that silence, there's an incredible amount of reflection taking place. This person keeps replaying certain moments in their mind. They wonder what they should have said differently. They wonder if they misunderstood you. They wonder if they let fear speak louder than love. Oh my God, some of them are beginning to realize that silence didn't erase their feelings. It only gave those feelings more room to grow. What feels especially beautiful is the appearance of the Page of Cups. There's something incredibly sincere surrounding this card today. It almost feels like the version of this person that first met you is beginning to return. The part of them that believed in possibility. The part that wasn't constantly calculating every outcome or protecting every emotion. It's as though your connection has quietly reminded them that vulnerability isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the beginning of something honest. At the very same time, Pisces, your intuition may have already started noticing little shifts that don't seem logical. Maybe you've been thinking about them more than usual without any clear reason. Maybe certain memories have resurfaced unexpectedly. Maybe you've simply had the quiet feeling that something is changing behind the scenes. It doesn't necessarily mean every answer is here today. It simply feels like your intuition is picking up on movement long before your eyes can see it. This connection still carries unanswered questions, and neither of you may fully understand where it's leading yet. But the energy surrounding these cards feels different now, softer, more genuine, less focused on running away, and more focused on understanding what the heart has been trying to say all along. And as these feelings continue unfolding beneath the surface, another layer of this story quietly begins preparing itself to be revealed. There's something quietly unfolding inside this person that they didn't expect. Life has continued moving around them, people have continued showing up, conversations have come and gone, but nothing seems to settle their heart the way it once did when you were simply present. It's almost as if they are discovering that peace isn't something they can manufacture. It was something they experienced naturally whenever your energy was close to theirs. The Five of Cups appears, and I can almost feel the weight they're carrying. This doesn't look like someone crying dramatically or begging for another chance. It's much quieter than that. It's the kind of regret that arrives when nobody else is watching. They might be driving home after work, sitting in complete silence, replaying moments they brushed aside because they thought there would always be another opportunity. Sometimes people don't recognize the value of consistency until consistency quietly walks away. You gave without making it feel like a transaction. You listened without expecting applause. You stayed patient much longer than most people would have. Because of that, your presence slowly became something they depended on without even realizing it. They assumed you would always understand. They assumed you would always be there. And assumptions have a way of becoming painful teachers. The Six of Cups gently enters the reading, bringing memories that seem impossible for them to shake. Little things begin finding them throughout the day. A familiar song, a certain street, a favorite meal, a phrase someone else accidentally says that immediately reminds them of you. These aren't necessarily signs they're trying to create. They simply happen, almost like life has decided to keep placing your energy in front of them until they stop pretending it doesn't matter. What's becoming very clear is that no one else has been able to recreate what they experienced with you. They may have surrounded themselves with people, they may have tried to stay busy, some may have even explored other connections hoping they could finally move on. But every comparison quietly leads back to the same realization. The comfort they found with you wasn't something that could be replaced. It wasn't about excitement alone. It was about feeling understood without constantly having to explain themselves. Justice rests beside these cards, and I sense this person beginning to look inward instead of pointing outward. They're no longer spending all their energy trying to justify what happened or explaining why they acted the way they did. Instead, they're asking themselves much harder questions. Why did I keep pushing away someone who genuinely cared? Why was I afraid of receiving the very thing I said I wanted? Those answers don't arrive overnight, but they seem willing to sit with the discomfort long enough to hear them. Oh my God. Self-honesty can feel heavier than any conversation with another person. It's much easier to blame timing, circumstances, distance, or misunderstandings than it is to admit that fear quietly influenced so many decisions. The Hermit appears, and this card brings an atmosphere of deep reflection. I don't see someone rushing toward you just because they're lonely. I see someone slowly recognizing patterns they've carried for years. They're beginning to notice how often they withdrew when love became real. How often they protected themselves by creating emotional distance instead of allowing intimacy to grow naturally. That awareness doesn't erase the past, but it can become the beginning of genuine change. Pisces, I also feel this message gently encouraging you not to underestimate the impact your quiet strength has had. Walking away wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about proving a point. It may simply have been the moment you finally chose your own emotional well-being. Sometimes love asks us to stay, and sometimes love asks us to honor ourselves enough to step back. Those choices often reveal truths that endless conversations never could. This person seems to be discovering that healing cannot be borrowed from other people. The calm they found in your presence inspired something inside them, but the work itself has to come from within. They're beginning to understand that if they truly hope to reconnect with someone as compassionate as you, they may first need to become someone capable of receiving that compassion without fear. A quiet shift is taking place beneath the surface, one that isn't asking for immediate answers or dramatic gestures. It's asking for honesty, patience, and the willingness to become different from who they once were. That journey appears to be opening a door they never imagined they would be ready to walk through, and what waits on the other side may reveal far more than they ever expected. A quiet realization seems to be changing the direction of this person's life in ways they never expected. There was a time when they believed that simply waiting would somehow solve everything, but waiting has given them something far more valuable than answers. It has given them perspective. The noise has settled enough for them to finally hear what their own heart has been trying to say all along. Judgment is the first card that comes forward, and it feels less like an ending and more like someone waking up after a very long sleep. It's almost as if they're looking back over the last several months and seeing the same story from an entirely different angle. The conversations they once dismissed suddenly carry new meaning. The choices they defended no longer feel as convincing. Even the silence between the two of you seems to speak louder than words ever did. Sometimes healing begins the moment we stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What was this trying to teach me?" This person may have found themselves searching for explanations that go beyond logic. They could be reading about soul connections, divine timing, synchronicities, or simply trying to understand why meeting one person managed to reshape their entire emotional world. Maybe they never believed in these things before. Maybe they laughed at ideas like this. But when an experience refuses to fit inside ordinary explanations, curiosity often replaces skepticism. The star brings an incredibly gentle energy into this reading. I don't see someone chasing perfection anymore. I see someone beginning to believe that becoming a healthier version of themselves is possible. There may still be difficult days, moments of doubt, times when old fears quietly return. But underneath all of that, hope is growing in a place where hopelessness once lived. Yeah, that's a beautiful transformation, because hope doesn't usually arrive all at once. It appears little by little, almost unnoticed, until one day you realize you're looking toward tomorrow instead of constantly staring at yesterday. The Eight of Pentacles tells me they're becoming much more intentional about their life. This may show up through practical changes. Some of them could be focusing on their career with a renewed sense of purpose. Others may be creating healthier routines, taking better care of themselves, seeking guidance, or finally addressing emotional wounds they've ignored for years. These changes don't necessarily feel dramatic from the outside, but inside, every small decision is helping them become someone they can genuinely respect. There's also something very touching about the way this person keeps returning to old conversations. Messages they barely noticed before suddenly feel different. A simple sentence you once shared may stay in their mind for hours. They begin realizing that your words were never trying to control them or pressure them. You were simply offering honesty. Looking back, they can finally see how much kindness existed between the lines. Oh my God! It's amazing how memory changes when the heart becomes ready to understand what the mind overlooked. The Hierophant quietly settles beside the other cards, and I feel this person becoming much more interested in building something meaningful instead of simply experiencing temporary emotions. They're beginning to question old beliefs they've carried for years. Ideas about relationships, ideas about vulnerability, ideas about what love is supposed to look like. Some of those beliefs may have protected them once, but they no longer seem capable of supporting the future they truly want. Pisces, one thing feels especially important here. This person is slowly recognizing that you never loved them because of their accomplishments, their appearance, or the image they presented to the world. You seem to connect with something much deeper. Even during moments when they struggled to recognize their own value, you somehow continued seeing the person they were capable of becoming. That realization can feel overwhelming because genuine acceptance is unfamiliar to someone who has spent much of their life believing they had to earn love by constantly proving themselves. Rather than trying to become someone completely different, they seem to be discovering that healing is really about returning to who they were before fear convinced them they weren't enough. Every lesson, every quiet moment of reflection, every change they're making appears to be guiding them closer to that truth. And as those pieces slowly begin falling into place, life seems ready to present a challenge that will ask them whether they're truly prepared to live differently than they once did. Life has a quiet way of interrupting the stories we keep telling ourselves. Sometimes those interruptions arrive gently. Other times they arrive all at once, leaving no room to keep pretending everything is fine. Looking at these cards, it feels as though this person has entered one of those seasons where avoidance simply isn't working anymore. The Tower stands before me, and it doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like truth, demanding to be seen. Structures they spent years relying on are beginning to crack. It could be the image they carefully built, relationships that no longer feel authentic, or dreams that were never truly theirs to begin with. Whatever has been shifting in their world seems to be asking one simple question. If all the distractions disappeared, what would your heart still choose? That's not an easy question for anyone. There may have been moments when they believed they could keep moving forward without looking back. They thought time would naturally erase regret, soften memories, and make everything easier. Instead, time has done something completely different. It has given those memories space to breathe. The faces, the conversations, the quiet moments they once overlooked have become impossible to ignore. The Nine of Swords appears, and I can almost feel how restless their nights have become. Sleep doesn't always come easily when the heart begins telling stories the mind has been trying to silence. There may be evenings when everything around them is perfectly quiet, yet inside, their thoughts refuse to settle. Questions begin circling over and over. What if I misunderstood them? What if I let fear make decisions that love should have made? What if the person who truly accepted me has already walked too far away? Yeah, regret often whispers much louder in silence than it ever does during the noise of everyday life. Pisces, I also feel something important here. This isn't simply about missing someone. It's about recognizing the emotional impact of choices that once seemed insignificant. There were times when this person may have believed your patience had no limits. They may have assumed you would always understand why they needed more time, more distance, or more space. Looking back, they seem to be realizing that every unanswered message, every emotional wall, every moment they chose pride over honesty slowly created a distance neither of you truly wanted. The Three of Swords carries an incredibly honest energy today. I don't see this card asking them to remain trapped in guilt. Instead, it feels like they're finally allowing themselves to admit that they caused pain they never fully acknowledged before. That's a difficult place to stand, because it requires humility. It asks someone to stop protecting their image and begin caring more about the truth. Oh my God. Sometimes the hardest apology isn't the one spoken aloud. It's the one we first have to admit quietly to ourselves. There's another layer unfolding here as well. The expectations they've been living under no longer seem to fit who they're becoming. Family opinions, social expectations, career goals, the image of success they thought they had to chase. Those things may still matter, but they don't seem to carry the same weight anymore. Something inside them is beginning to ask whether a life that looks successful but feels emotionally empty is really success at all. Death arrives with an energy that feels surprisingly peaceful. I don't sense destruction here. I sense surrender. They're beginning to release old versions of themselves that survived by controlling everything, avoiding vulnerability, or believing love had to be earned through perfection. Those habits may have protected them once, but they also kept genuine intimacy at a distance. The more they let those old patterns fall away, the clearer one truth seems to become. Real love isn't easily replaced. Genuine emotional safety doesn't appear around every corner. Someone who sees your soul instead of simply admiring your appearance is extraordinarily rare. That realization seems to be reshaping the way they view everything they once took for granted. Pisces, if you've been wondering whether your kindness truly mattered, these cards quietly suggest that its impact reached much deeper than either of you may have understood at the time. Love has a way of leaving gentle fingerprints on the heart, even during seasons when no one speaks about it. Those fingerprints don't disappear simply because life becomes complicated. A different version of this person appears to be emerging from everything they've experienced, less concerned with appearances, less interested in proving themselves to the world, more willing to acknowledge what their heart has been trying to protect all along. That quiet transformation seems to be preparing them for a decision that can no longer remain unfinished, one that may require far more courage than anything they've faced before. Some connections have a way of quietly following us wherever we go. They don't demand attention. They don't interrupt every moment of the day. They simply linger beneath the surface until something small brings them back into focus. Looking at these cards, it feels like that's exactly what's happening here. Your presence seems to have become part of this person's inner world in ways they never imagined. The devil immediately catches my attention, But what I feel isn't simply obsession. It feels like attachment mixed with unfinished emotion. No matter how determined they are to move forward, some invisible thread keeps drawing their thoughts back to you. They may wake up thinking about their responsibilities, only to find themselves remembering your smile halfway through the afternoon. A familiar song, a certain perfume, the sound of rain, even passing someone who vaguely resembles you can unexpectedly shift their entire mood. They probably don't talk about this with many people. In fact, they may act as though everything is perfectly fine, but inside, there's an ongoing conversation that never seems to end. Part of them keeps wondering what life would have looked like if they had chosen differently. I also sense this person quietly watching from a distance. That doesn't necessarily mean every one of them is checking social media every day. Sometimes watching simply means paying attention whenever your name comes up, asking mutual friends how you're doing without making it obvious, or hoping to accidentally hear something about your life. They seem curious about whether you're happy, whether you've found someone else, whether you've completely moved on, and whether they still occupy even a small corner of your heart. The Two of Swords reveals why they haven't simply rushed toward you. Their heart seems ready to move, but their fears continue asking difficult questions. What if I'm too late? What if Pisces has outgrown me? What if they've finally found the peace I couldn't give them? Those thoughts seem to create hesitation every time they consider taking a step forward. Yeah, fear has an incredible way of disguising itself as caution. It tells people they're being careful when, deep down, they're really protecting themselves from possible disappointment. Something feels different whenever they think about you these days. Pisces, your energy appears much calmer than it once was. You're no longer waiting for someone else to decide your worth. There's a quiet confidence surrounding you that doesn't ask for attention because it doesn't need it. You're simply becoming more comfortable in your own heart, and somehow that transformation is reaching them even from afar. The Emperor enters the reading with an energy that surprises me. I don't see this person admiring only your kindness anymore. They also admire your strength. They notice how you've continued building your life without bitterness. They see someone who has learned difficult lessons without allowing those lessons to harden their heart. That kind of maturity commands respect in a very different way than charm or attraction ever could. Oh my God, sometimes the most attractive thing about a person isn't how much they want us. It's watching them become completely whole on their own. At the same time, this admiration brings an uncomfortable realization. They begin wondering whether they've become the one who isn't ready. Instead of asking whether you're good enough for them, they're quietly asking whether they could truly offer you the kind of relationship you deserve. That question seems to humble them more than anything else. The Queen of Cups appears so beautifully here, and it feels like your energy is reminding them what emotional safety actually feels like. You may never have asked this person to become someone else. You simply invited them to be honest. Looking back, they can finally recognize how rare that invitation really was. Many people wanted pieces of them. Very few people genuinely wanted to understand them. Because of that realization, they're beginning to understand something they never fully appreciated before. Love isn't measured by dramatic promises or perfect timing. Sometimes it's found in the person who quietly stayed compassionate while encouraging us to grow into someone healthier. That appears to be the role you've played in their life, whether either of you fully understood it at the time or not. A quiet urgency seems to be building beneath everything they've been feeling. Not because they're being pressured by anyone else, but because they're slowly recognizing that meaningful opportunities don't remain open forever. The heart has a gentle way of reminding us when something is worth protecting, and that reminder seems to be growing stronger with every passing day. It feels as though they're approaching a moment where remaining silent may no longer feel like the safest choice, especially when their soul keeps pulling them toward a conversation they've postponed for far too long. A feeling of quiet certainty surrounds these cards. Not the kind of certainty that demands immediate action or promises a perfect ending, but the kind that grows after someone has spent enough time confronting themselves. There comes a point when carrying the weight of unspoken emotions becomes far more exhausting than finally speaking the truth. Looking at this spread, it feels as though this person has reached that crossroads. The Three of Wands is the first card to draw my attention, and it carries an energy of looking beyond what once felt impossible. For a long time, this person may have focused only on everything that went wrong, everything they couldn't change, or every reason why reconnecting seemed too difficult. Those thoughts seem to be giving way to something much more hopeful. They're beginning to imagine a future instead of remaining trapped inside old chapters. That's a significant shift, because hope usually appears before courage does. Sometimes people don't become brave because they're fearless. They become brave because they finally realize they have more to lose by staying silent than by opening their heart. The Emperor returns, but this energy feels different from before. It no longer carries the need to control every outcome or protect every emotion behind walls. Instead, it feels grounded, mature, intentional. This person seems to understand that genuine love isn't built through perfect words. It's built through consistency, accountability, and the willingness to show up even after difficult mistakes. They appear far more interested in becoming someone dependable than simply appearing impressive. The Hierophant gently settles into the reading, and I sense a growing respect for commitment, honesty, and shared values. Whatever this connection means to them, it no longer feels like something they want to leave unfinished. They're beginning to understand that meaningful relationships ask us to participate with our whole heart, instead of standing safely at the edge, waiting for guarantees that life rarely offers. Yeah, love asks for presence, not perfection. Judgment appears once again, almost like a final invitation to leave the past where it belongs. This isn't about pretending painful experiences never happened. It's about refusing to let those experiences decide the future forever. They seem ready to forgive themselves for what they didn't understand back then, while also accepting responsibility for the moments when fear spoke louder than love. That balance between accountability and self-compassion feels incredibly important because lasting change often begins there. Pisces, I also feel these cards reminding you that your own journey has never depended on someone else's timeline. You've continued growing, learning, and creating peace within yourself. That inner work hasn't been wasted. It has quietly prepared you to recognize authenticity if and when it appears. Whatever choices eventually unfold between you and this person, you're no longer standing in the same place emotionally as you once were. There's wisdom in your heart that wasn't there before. The Ace of Swords brings a refreshing sense of clarity. Conversations that once felt impossible may slowly become easier. Words that remained trapped behind fear may finally find their way into the open. This doesn't necessarily mean every answer arrives immediately, but honesty seems much closer than it once was. Masks become difficult to wear when the heart grows tired of pretending. There may come a moment when someone simply says what they've been carrying for far too long, because keeping it hidden no longer feels like an option. Oh my God, truth has a remarkable way of creating peace, even when it first arrives with trembling hands. The final card resting on the table is the Ten of Cups, and what I love most about its energy is that it doesn't feel rushed. It feels earned. Whatever future is slowly unfolding here seems to be built upon lessons both of you have lived, rather than promises spoken too quickly. Emotional maturity changes the way people love. It teaches patience where there was once urgency, gratitude where there was once expectation, presence where there was once fear. Perhaps that's the greatest message these cards have been trying to share all along. Real love doesn't ask us to become someone else. It quietly encourages us to become more honest versions of who we've always been. When two people are willing to meet each other from that place, beautiful things have room to grow naturally, one sincere conversation at a time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, Pisces. I truly appreciate every one of you who shares these moments and these readings with an open heart. If this message resonated with you, take what feels right for your journey and leave the rest with love. Pisces, you mean so much to me, and I'll see you again in the next reading. Until then, take gentle care of yourself. Goodbye, my friends.